What's up guys, it's Ryan and Eric from Tower Reviews, and today we're going to be comparing the Nexus 7 on the right, Google's 7-inch tablet, to Apple's newly released iPod Touch 4-inch. So we're going to compare the hardware and then we're going to go into the software.
Now you might say, why would we be comparing these two devices? But in our opinion, we think they come in a rather close price point, and if you have some money to throw around for a leisure electronic device, we want to make sure that you make an informed decision on what you want to buy.
Let's just go around the external hardware for now, and then we'll talk about the internals of them. So the Nexus is a rather budget device. Obviously, it's $200, so it's more plasticky. We've got this sort of hard plastic backing that also has sort of a grip, holes throughout it, kind of golf ball textured. Definitely feels pretty premium. It's plasticky, but it still does feel nice. Has nice weight to it. Very thin, easy to hold in one hand. The Nexus branding and Asus branding definitely looks pretty nice. Some things that kind of make it seem a little bit cheaper though are distortion in the display if you press around the back. So in the first iteration of the software on this device, I noticed a screen flickering, but it seems Google has fixed that with the software. And they also added landscape rotation, as you can see there, native to the device. Which is pretty nice. So that's a sign that Google is definitely keeping up to date. But we're talking about hardware now. So we've got the quad-core Tegra 3 processor in this bad boy, which is great for gaming and multitasking and just running the system as a whole. Got a gig of RAM in this thing, which is pretty impressive for a $200 tablet. It's definitely top-of-the-line spec. We've got over here on the right side, we've got the volume rocker and also the power switch. Bottom, we've got micro USB 3.5mm headset jack. And on the front we have the 1.2 megapixel front-facing camera that really doesn't get much support as there's no native camera app, but it's still nice to have, and no rear-facing camera.
Okay, so looking at the iPod Touch from the exterior, you can see it's built with a little bit higher quality materials than the Nexus 7, just because obviously it is a product of Apple, and that is kind of their trademark to have nice materials. As you can see on the back, you have the aluminum, reminiscent of the aluminum on the unibody MacBook Pro line that has been out for a few years now. On the front, you do have glass. It always seems like high quality materials on Apple products, so both the aluminum and the glass feel very luxurious to the touch. This hardware-wise, it is sporting the A5 chip, which was in the iPhone 4S. Also 512 megabytes of RAM, and iOS 6, of course.
Also got the 1.2 megapixel HD FaceTime camera, the 5 megapixel iSight camera with LED flash on the back. Got the Wi-Fi antenna there, and the newly added loop down here. And then on the bottom you've got the speaker, which I forgot to mention on the Nexus 7, but it has a speaker on the back which puts out decent sound, but it's facing away from you, so it's not great. And then you got the newly added lightning connector for data and charging. And that about sums up the external and internal hardware. Now let's get into the software and see how that works with the hardware we just explained. Alright, so here we are looking at the front of these two devices. Let's go ahead and turn them on and see what each one has to offer. So we've got that Android lock screen there and the iOS lock screen that hasn't changed since 2007. So we slide to unlock, and there we are. So we've got obviously a high amount of customization here on the Nexus 7, as you can see by all the things I've done there that you probably wouldn't see if you turned on about 100 different Nexus 7, so that's always awesome. But there on the iPod Touch, you have that iconic home screen that everyone with an iPod Touch has. So obviously what I'm getting at here is you're going to have more customization if you go with the Nexus 7, which also has about 4 times as much screen real estate, 2 times in length, but then in area it's probably closer to 4 times the amount of space you have to do with that stuff. So we're also going to do some speed tests and see which one just overall has the better experience. So let's just power them down. Okay, so they're both shutting down. iPod Touch was done first. We've got the 32 gigabyte iPod Touch over here, which is the lowest amount, and we've got the 16 gigabyte Nexus 7, which is the highest amount at this point in time, late 2012. Alright, so now we're going to power them back up. Okay, so it looks like the iPod Touch won. Okay, and the Nexus 7 is up. And as you can see there, it lagged a little bit and all the widgets are loading, so it's not as pretty of an experience when it first loads up. Alright, so they're both loaded up, everything on their home screens. Obviously not much for the iPod Touch 5th generation to do here because it has no live data on the home screen. You have to click on each individual app to see any of the data. But over here on the Nexus 7, if you want any specific type of app to show you information from the home screen, you can just go into the Play Store and search for it, and chances are they will have it. So we're just going to go through all the different features of the operating systems and just touch on how each one does it and which one I think personally executes it better. So we're going to start out with notifications. You have a pull-down notification center here, which has been in Android for a while. I believe it used to be pulled up from the bottom, so they just changed it to the top. You have the same thing over here pretty much on the 5th generation, so anything that happens, as you can see here, I have a Game Center request, so that would show up there. I got the weather and the stocks. I wish Apple would incorporate this into their App Store so you could sort of get widgets in your pull-down menu. I think that would be pretty cool. Give you some more options other than just weather and stocks. So you can simply X out. So they give you a decent amount of data there. They tell you pretty much everything you need to know. And in Android, the same is true. Although right now I don't have any. You can simply use a 2-finger pull down and see a lot more information there. You also have shortcut to portrait orientation lock, or orientation lock, not just portrait, and settings, so that's pretty nice. Obviously up here in the status bar you have Wi-Fi, battery, and time. Same is true here on the iPod. So let's go into multitasking now. You've got the static touch buttons down here that show you home, back, and multitasking. So you have a thumbnail of each, which is nice, and the name also. You can simply swipe to get rid of, which is definitely a better method in my opinion than what Apple has over here, which is just double tap, you see just the app, and then you have to hold down and touch the minus button to close them, which I personally think is cumbersome, and there should be at least a way to delete all of them. And then if you scroll left, you have music controls and volume control. So on the Nexus 7 you have 5 home screens, which you can customize how you like. I only take advantage of one of them because it's really all I need to access my stuff. I really could make do with just one because you have all your apps easy to access at any point with this button down here, which stays with you on each home screen in your dock. So you have this is the preset apps that Google thinks that you would use. It's obviously in a folder, which is another feature that the iPod Touch has. You can move apps into folders here. That's about the extent of the customizability on the iPod Touch 5th generation, and all Apple products for that matter. However, on Android you have pretty much reign to do whatever you want. So you have your apps here in your app drawer, and then you have also widgets in the same convenient place. And I just like the easy access to everything that you have in Android. You can just simply hold down. But I don't really want to get too far into that because that's becoming Android versus iOS. I'm just giving you a quick taste of how you would be using this device if you decided to get one over the other. So I just want to talk a little bit about the ecosystem, the app ecosystem and everything there. So you got the Play Store over here, which incorporates all the different things. You got the bookstore, magazines, apps, music. They're really pushing this Google Play. It's actually a relatively new thing. It used to be the Android market. I find it to be somewhat lacking. I can't always find... Maybe it's because I started out on iOS. I'm just used to those apps, and I know what is available, and there's a large game selection. There still is a good selection of apps over here on the Nexus 7, but they're not optimized for this specific tablet, obviously, because there's hundreds, if not thousands, of Android devices. They can't optimize each one. So you're going to find that there is a good selection. Just right here you can see that these are pretty nice apps, a lot you would find on iOS. If you just look at my app selection, it's not as extensive as what would be on my iPod Touch, which I haven't even had that long. Maybe that's just me, but I found that the iOS ecosystem, not only is it good on this specific device, but if you have other Apple products, it's going to be, with iCloud and everything, it's just going to sync up perfectly. And you can't really say the same about Google because they don't really have their own operating system. I mean, obviously they have Chrome OS and then Google Chrome, which is nice, but it's not really the same as having a bunch of different hardware devices running a interrelated operating system such as iOS and OS X. So that's just something to consider when going to the respective web browsers. So we got Google Chrome running native here on the Nexus 7, which runs well most of the time. I mean, it's not, overall it's not as fluid as iOS, but it still works pretty well. So let's just quickly go to my YouTube channel and see which one is able to load quicker, and then we'll see which one's overall more fluid when scrolling around a page by going to New York Times. Another thing to consider is the keyboards here. You've got obviously a much larger keyboard in portrait, and then when you turn it to landscape you can actually type out on that, and then you can get your own custom keyboards, which is nice. You can get a thumb keyboard or whatever you like. Can't really do anything about the iOS keyboards, so let's go. Alright, so it looks like they were about the same. Both are pretty quick devices. Let's load up the video. So they're going to play in different formats because...
What's up guys, it's Ryan from Tower Reviews, and today I'm going to be doing a video comparison.
Looks like they are actually very close. I paused it on the Nexus 7 there, but they started at about the same time. So this is Android 4.1, so it doesn't have flash. That's another thing to consider when buying this tablet. Alright, so obviously Google Chrome is linked into the desktop Google Chrome, so it's gonna remember all the history that you use on your computer, which is very nice. So if you go on a website and then you want to go back to it on your Nexus, it'll be there. Both, it's actually very fluid at loading. Both, obviously. 326 pixels per inch, whereas on the Nexus 7 it's 216 pixels per inch, but both are very nice looking displays. The Nexus 7 looks a bit whiter here. As you can see, there's a yellowish tint to the iPod Touch, but overall they both perform very well, and it's really going to come down to the form factor you like if you are planning to do a lot of web browsing on it. You're going to get a very nice tablet form factor here in 7 inches where you can see a lot more stuff when you web browse, when you do a lot of things. It's just you're going to lack in the ecosystem, and the overall fluidity doesn't match quite with iOS. I think with one more update to Android, you're going to see that fluidity. It's going to match iOS, and then iOS better look out. They still have the ecosystem over Android because obviously they have all the computers and the iPad and everything in one. So we even have the voice assistant on the Nexus 7, so let's quickly compare these. Not yet. In terms of the actual voice assistant, I still think Siri's better, but I like how the Google Now has this predictive sort of thing that it knows where you are and it will give you relevant information to your area. It'll give you time to home, weather. It really is a nice place to just, if you wake up in the morning, flick up and see what it's recommending based on your previous searches and your location. So let's just ask it a question. What was the score of the Sixers game?
The 76ers beat the Knicks by a score of 98-90 yesterday.
Okay, so it looks like the Nexus 7 did not work there, so that's a little weird. Usually it would bring up a card specific to that, but let's try something else. What's the weather looking like tomorrow?
Looks like nice weather coming up tomorrow. Up to 73 degrees and partly sunny.
Okay, it looks like the Nexus again searched the internet, which is kind of, that gives you a little taste of what you're going to be dealing with Google Now. I haven't had any issues with that, although I don't really use it at all ever, so maybe that would happen more times if I used it more. Yeah, overall it just comes down to preference. You're going to have to weigh your personal attributes and whatever you want to use this for. Thanks for watching this video comparing the iPod Touch 5th generation to the Nexus 7.